This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show from James Cook University, Singapore. Tune in as we ask experts in the industry more about their lives and their approach to success. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Sherry, a lecturer in psychology at JCU Singapore. I'm excited to have as our guest today Ms. Koh Yan Ping, the Chief Executive Officer at the Singapore Council of Women's Organisations, the national coordinating body for women's organisations in Singapore. Welcome, Yan Ping. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I'm really glad that you invited me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Right. So let's start with the exciting bits. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And also introduce our listeners and viewers to the SCWO and what do you do?
Well, I'm the CEO with Singapore Council of Women's Organisations. The organisation, as you mentioned in the introduction, we are a national coordinating body. So actually a lot of people did not know this. In Singapore, there are many women groups and women organisations, societies and associations and clubs. They are all, serving a certain cause for women. They're contributing to the conversation around gender equality, helping women in our community. So what we do as the council is we try to bring everybody together, to unite them, create a platform for all these women groups to come together and to amplify the voices in conversations about what we need to do to help women in Singapore. So that's actually the main reason why we were set up in 45 years ago. Actually, this is our 45th anniversary in 1980. We were started with that purpose in mind. But of course, over the years we have grown. We started with just 15 member organizations who were part of us, and then now we have more than 60 member organizations, all coming from different areas and different incisors. Some of them represent women who are professionals. We have women lawyers, women doctors. We have women in sustainability and environment. We have groups that help the more vulnerable women as well. So it's a very diverse group. So our aim is really, through the network that we have, bring everybody together to collaborate, co-create solutions, and see what else we can do to contribute to women in Singapore.
So do you have some examples of organizations that you're working with? And is it is your role to set the agenda for gender equality, or just because every organization has their own mini mission and so on, right?
Definitely.
So what is your overarching?
So overall, I think you're right. So because of the diversity that we have among our own member organizations, but one thing that's common that strings everybody together is really just simply the word women. And for SCWO, I think we bring value to them because we are able to create that bridge between all these member organizations and the women in the community, and even people who are working on the ground with women, to have a bridge to our policymakers, to the various stakeholders in the ecosystem. So recent years there have been a lot of conversations also about women's development in Singapore. The last few years we saw the white paper on women's development being launched, and then we had a lot of engagement sessions. So SCWO was a key partner in this entire effort, together with, of course, our government ministries and agencies. So that's something that we do. But of course, we want to encourage actually different voices as well. We want to encourage different viewpoints, and I think that's the beauty of it all. As SCWO, we get to interact and engage with different groups, different women organizations, even men as well. Throughout this journey, I think we must not forget that actually we do need the males, the allies that we have as part of the whole entire effort and conversations. And because SCWO is actually in the position to be able to bring everybody together, so I think that's something that we will continue to do, definitely. We've been here for 45 years. I think the next 5 to 10 years, I think this is even more critical, actually.
Yeah, it's like a messaging thing, right? Because even though we talk about women, but it's really gender equality, and then there is also the men that support and work together with us for equality.
Yeah.
So could you share a little bit about your own journey to where you are right now, right? What sparked your interest? Why this field? What sparked your interest or passion for pursuing gender equality?
Honestly, I stumbled into this. When I first started, I wasn't looking for something in non-profit, neither was I looking for something in activism or advocacy. But I guess it is just somehow the plans just worked out, because I myself was a young mother back then, right? And when I first had my own kid, it was at a point not revealing my age, but it was at a point where, we don't have a lot of the current policies that we have for marriage and parenthood. It was not as progressive, not as extensive. So, I was struggling quite a bit on my own. And of course, there were some experiences and challenges that I faced. And I happened to then, come across an opportunity with the labor movement, with the trade union. And at that point in time, more than 15 years ago already, this was, and they were already trying to set up a department or a unit to look at how to help working mothers and working families. And I somehow managed to get into the opportunity and hop onto it. And then from then on, I've been in this area talking about what more we can do together with employers, together with various stakeholders to try to make work-life balance more of a reality for our working parents in Singapore. So that's how I got started. And for myself, of course, after many years looking at employment from an employment lens, looking at the issue of women from an employment lens, I realized that employment is actually really, it's really vital, it's a key, but there are many, many issues beyond the workplace that also we need to address in order to really get to the root cause, to try to, in a way, not solve, but try to bring about this gender equality vision that we have. I think there's a lot more that we need to do beyond the workplace and employment related issues. So I thought, being part of SCWO would definitely enable me to do that because, as I said earlier, the issues that we looked at is very wide-ranging, right? We looked at issues from violence against women to issues about changing gender mindsets against gender stereotypes, talking about gender biases, talking about making sure that we have more women voices in our leadership, top-tier leadership positions. So it's beyond just looking at workplace policies issues. Yeah, so that's something that I felt very motivated coming into SCWO and being able to work together with really, really like-minded and very passionate women in the whole community in our ecosystem.
I completely sort of agree. I can empathize. I think a lot of advocacy work is very personally driven, right? That's where you get that passion from.
Yep.
And I mean, for me also, when I work in organizational psychology, we do tend to see this kind of like gender, working from home, work-life balance. That's also my interest, and also maybe because, I'm a mom, so I completely feel and understand you. So yeah,
we actually go through
vibe,
that, right?
Yeah. So speaking of, you speak a lot about the different pathways of gender, not just the workplace, but also societal mindsets at home, domestic violence and things like that. But some people might actually say that Singapore is actually pretty good at gender equality already. The Ministry of Social and Family Development reported that we are ranked number 8 in the UN's Gender Inequality Index, right?
Yes.
So, obviously a high ranking does not mean we have achieved gender equality, but I guess what would you say to people who are like, it's enough, we have done enough? Or maybe where I'm coming from with this question is that we have seen in other countries, other nations, where that push for DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, has resulted in a backlash, unfortunately. And that actually reversed progress that has been made, right? So is that enough? Is there a time to stop? Do we take a break? What's the next step? What do you think?
I think, this is a very good question. And I get that question all the time. Well, honestly, I think first of all, okay, let's be positive and say, yes, I think Singapore has done well. Right, and really give ourselves a pat on the back and say that I think as a society, as a nation, I think Singapore has really done well. We have done much better than a lot of our neighboring countries. And in fact, you look at the statistics, right, that shows you, in terms of ranking, and Singapore being very Singaporean, we like numbers and we like ranking. So we're doing not bad. Yeah, it's like a KPI. We're not bad. In fact, the most recent one says that we are the third happiest.
Oh, yeah.
So
a lot of memes have popped out.
We're the third happiest. So so good job everyone, right? So I think it's good to recognize that there has been progress, and it's important to recognize and celebrate these little achievements that we have made as a society in terms of women's development progress. But for us, of course, when you look at anything that has got to do with ranking, again, because they look at certain variables, certain factors, right? So if you look at it, the measurable factors, things like education level, look at employment level, I think definitely Singapore ranks very high because our women employment rate is really high, right? Our female labour force participation rate is also one of the highest. Education level, we have more female graduates now than men. So a lot of these stats and data will point to the fact that, hey, our women are doing fairly well. compared to a lot of the women in other countries. So, but of course, then there are other things that you cannot measure. There are things that you measure and then you say, yes, you've done well, but then there are things that you don't measure or you are not able to accurately measure at this moment. And that's where we are concerned with.
Yeah, like objectively, we are good with labor force participation, with education.
Even healthcare,
healthcare,
life expectancy.
But then it doesn't take into account what happens at home with the caregiving.
That's right,
because
the reality.
You work at the same rate. Are you the household chores? Is it the same rate? Is the caregiving at the same rate? And that's the thing that we are missing.
We are missing. So we still lack in definitely certain areas. And I think even if you want to talk about numbers and figures, right? Okay, maybe we can look at gender pay gap. I mean, we have a gender pay gap still in Singapore, and this is a number that's being tracked by MOM. They publish it, right? So it's publicly available. If you go look it up, we do have a gender pay gap. So there's always a conversation around then what causes the gender pay gap. Why is there a gender pay gap? Are we able to close this gender pay gap? So when you say that, Singapore, you've done a lot already, we're very good in terms of gender equality, don't need to spend too much time and effort and resources into it. But then I would then point us to, hey, then why is there still a gender pay gap? Right? And what contributes to this pay gap? So when you look at what contributes to it, I think you cannot avoid the topic of saying that, women tend to be the primary caregiver in our current Asian society and very traditional kind of family mindsets. I think women still bear the main bulk of caregiving. And that the main bulk of caregiving don't just refer to caregiving for young children. We're talking about an aging population, that we have an aging society. So increasingly, they are sandwiched between caring for not just the young, but also the elderly. And this is a fact that really women are still the main ones doing this caregiving duty. And because of this reason, it affects a lot of the employment choices, employment options, and employment decisions of women, which then has a repercussion down the line. Because a lot of, I'm sure, Jerry, you would have had friends who had taken career breaks. You would have had seen women who dropped out of the workforce at various points in their career. But usually the reason is caregiving. And with this break in their career journey, it definitely puts a dent, right, in terms of the progression. And then it ultimately ends up, in terms of their income level. And we see the pay gap that we have today. So solving the pay gap is actually a very complex issue. Yeah. Yeah,
it's so systemic, right? Because so you mentioned I have friends who have taken a care break. I mean, given my current life stage, their caregiving is for young children, right? Healthcare, education. Yeah. They do tend to take no pay leave just to spend more time with their kids. But then it also speaks to not everybody can afford to take that time. So obviously our choice in a way, but who is willing to step away from the workforce? Do you still foresee having a career when you come back? Yeah. I guess healthcare is an iron rice bowl-ish because, there's a high need for healthcare professionals. But in other sectors, it's not so easy to step away, because when you step away, especially in the private sector, you can't go back in, especially to justify why you took a year off, why you took 2 years off. So that's
right.
A major thing. You also spoke about how caregiving is not just about young children, and I feel like the conversation that we have in Singapore now is really because we want to boost the birth rate, right? About how we can help young mothers, young families, and so on. And then the older side of caregiving has kind of been neglected. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
So yeah.
I think definitely we see a lot of efforts going into boosting our birth rate, and I think it is still important that we do what we can and we try our best, to encourage people to set up families. But at the core of it, I think you need to get to the root cause. So what is it? Why are couples not having babies, right? Or why are people not marrying? Why are not getting married? I believe it still goes back to the fact that it's a mindset issue, right? And if we are not able to shift this, as a society, our mindset in terms of gender norms, it'll be very difficult to get people to say, hey, I want to have more children, because I will be thinking about, oh my gosh, the caregiving responsibility and the burden that I have to, or the fact, not that I don't want to have this burden, but rather, will I be able to manage it well? Will I be able to do a good job? Will there be an impact on, different areas of my life? And I think it's a difficult decision. And I think a lot of the young people today, they are very concerned. Right. But of course, I think if you talk about policies aiming at the younger parents or young families, these are things that we continue to see. And I think a lot of our neighboring countries or countries in the region also take Singapore as a case study and say, wow, your government gives out really generous baby bonuses and this and that to encourage babies. We get a lot of international guests coming to Singapore to visit SCWO to learn about Singapore's policies and they always ask, does the baby bonus work? Has it helped you in any way in Singapore in boosting the birth rate? And every time I feel a bit, yeah, it's a great thing, but I think the results we haven't seen the results because the numbers for TFR doesn't show.
Yeah,
it's below
falling.
1, it's falling.
It's falling.
So definitely it's a deeper issue than that. But I want to go back to your point about what about the other age groups, right? So interestingly, back when we had a whole year of conversation on women's development in 2020, which then landed in the white paper being published in 2021, 2022, we actually, SCWO and a few of our partners, we actually formed this alliance, which is called the Singapore Alliance for Women in Aging. And because SCWO on our own, since 2019, we've already established a task force that looks at women and aging issues. And the task force decided, hey, there could be synergies working with other organizations who are also, very keen to see how we can better support women in aging. So we formed this alliance called SAWA. And SAWA actually took the initiative to say, why is everything in a white paper aimed at, like what you said, women who are, maybe still of childbearing age or the younger women, right? What about women who are already in a way past that? Women who are already in their 50s, or beyond, the older women. Is there anything being done to look at what they need, what kind of support and challenges that they are facing? Because it is true that women who are older have different needs from men who are older as well, right? So it's just not just biological, but everything else, there's differences in terms of the support area. So we went to look at that and did a study on just this group of women in their 50s to 60s and realized that their top concerns are things that, are not being addressed currently in the white paper. And in a lot of our government policies now, maybe you don't have a very much what we call a gender lens to it when it comes to healthcare and even aging policies. So that's something that SCWO and together with our allies in the alliance and our other member organizations, we are very concerned. We want to continue to highlight that actually you need to also spend time to look at this group. And so when we did a survey back in 2022, we came up with this term called Tomorrow's New O. And this is really a group of individual Singaporeans and our permanent resident people in Singapore who are staying here, who are going to turn 60, 65 soon in the next 5 to 10 years because our retirement age is going up. Reemployment age is going up, right? So, and of course, the population of people who are above 65 is going to go out and double in the next decades or so. So there is a need to look at this group, but you don't talk about their issue only when they are at that age. We want to do what we call preventive, you want to go upstream. So we started talking to people in the 50s already. Back then, a couple of years ago, we started looking at this group called Tomorrow's New O. And we find that, they do have very unique challenges. And we need to address them.
Do you have an example of one of these unique challenges or an anecdote to share?
Well, there's several because we've done a survey and we've also done focus group discussions. And what struck me, and I always like to use that as an example, is we have this lady in one of the focus group. She's in her 50s. Obviously, she had taken a career break. She was a caregiver for many, many years. And now she's like, I'm ready to come back to work. Want to look for a full-time job. So what do you do in Singapore when you want to look for a job? So either you go for job fairs, right? Because we have a lot of that, right? Career fairs, job fairs. So she does go and participate in this very actively, but she feels very dismayed and very discouraged rather. She feels discouraged every time because when you go there, people will approach her, people with flyers and brochures coming up to say, hey, will you be interested in this position? Would you like to apply? And every time when people go up to her, recruiters go up to her and she see the flyer that's being given to her, it's always for positions like cleaning or like retail roles, very much the manual rank and file type of positions. So she's in her 50s and she's like, actually, I'm actually trained. I'm a music teacher, right? I have a background in music, right? But the first impression that people get when they see a woman of this age coming to a job fair is that you are just, auntie, a not so nice term, right? Auntie, a typical auntie coming
They
to
really
look for.
box you what kind
Yes,
of
they
job
already had that
you're going
bias.
for, yeah.
Exactly. So she feels very discouraged. But even then, if she tries to apply for positions that are, let's say, related to music, I think she finds it difficult. The challenge that you highlighted earlier about how actually it's not that simple and straightforward to jump back in after a long break. Yeah. So these are actually huge challenges that I think we need to address, because without that, then these women will not be able to kind of like plan for their retirement properly. And we're talking about retirement maybe when they're 70, not when they are in their 60s anymore, right? And if you're in your 50s now, you actually have a good 20 years career, if you think about it that way. So that I was at another conference the other day, and one of the speakers pointed it out that if you think about it, in your 50s now, actually, if you go and apply for a job and the employer thinks that you're too old,
20 more years.
You have 20 years. Potentially.
But I mean, the reemployment age is also up to the employer. They have their own ageism sometimes, right?
There's a lot
whether
of...
or not they would want to continue hiring you.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a lot of insecurity when it comes to that. Once you hit the 60s.
Correct.
It's like, do I still have a job? Every year, do I still have a job? And
correct. So there's uncertainty there. Yeah. The job security, of course, is something that's always on their minds of this group of people. But I think I just want to go back to the earlier point about how employers or even HR and recruiters, when they receive resumes and applications for people who are, more mature, they tend to like dismiss and say, kind of like not much runway.
Yeah.
Right? But earlier we said, actually, if you think about it, if you talk about it, you still have maybe a good 10, 20 years if, let's say, you get reemployed. Compared to this example that I'm sharing, was highlighted by somebody, and it really woke me up, because it reminded me of the reality that if you talk about younger people these days, what would be the pattern that we see in terms of them going around? I won't say job hop, but they like to have a change.
Yeah, actually, I just that was something I thought of when you mentioned it. Like when you talk about runway, right?
Yeah.
Actually, the older workers tend to probably be more loyal.
They stay longer, and but actually the younger ones, they maybe 2 years,
they want to
3
explore,
years, they want to explore,
right?
try
So
something
in terms of
different.
So
do you really think that there's a runway for the younger people? Actually, that might not be the reality.
Yeah. But so in the interest of time, and also just to follow up from what you say, since we're talking about organizations and how they treat. So the Singapore has recently passed the Workplace Fairness Act.
Yes.
How do you think, so that makes it illegal to discriminate against, based on characteristics, age, gender, and so on, which is the stuff that we're talking about right now. What are some key challenges in your view that organizations may face when implementing this Workplace Fairness Act? I
mean, it's a law, it's a legislation. So I think definitely employers will need to comply, right? Because if not, you get into trouble. But I think it's always in the implementation, the challenge. Implementing it into actually down the ranks of the company, that is difficult. And earlier on, we already highlighted examples of how discrimination can happen at the point of hiring, because your HR and people who's doing recruitment, hiring managers, they actually may not be aware of this bias that they have, or this stereotype, right? It's unconscious sometimes. And so how do we make sure that in terms of an entire organization, this message is clear? And it goes down, and in terms of the company culture as well, to not just say that, we have a law, we cannot discriminate, but how do you do that? How do you actually exhibit behaviors that do not discriminate? Yeah, so that's something that I think will be a challenge, especially for the smaller SMEs as well.
And what do you think the role of SCWO is in helping companies' implementation with the Workplace Fairness Act?
For us, I think as SCWO, one thing that we realize that there is a gap for sure in terms of capability building, and we have been highlighting this issue about making sure that there must be complementary resources and support given to employers, especially the smaller employers. And even in fact in non-profit sector, social service agencies like us, we also lack sometimes HR expertise. So we do need support in this area. So we've been highlighting this as an issue in a lot of our conversations and consultations with the ministries. And at the same time, we also find that, of course, when it comes to, unfortunately, if you are a victim to discrimination, whatever form it may be, it is a very traumatic process. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to want to come out and make a report and, go through the entire process. So we felt that as SCWO, maybe this is something that we wanted to look at, how we can support women who are going through any form of discrimination or even harassment at the workplace, how we can support them emotionally and mentally as well. Because being told that you are being protected, your identity is being protected, like you cannot be no retaliation, right? The law now says that you cannot retaliate, but sometimes these are very subtle things, yeah. And I think a lot of women do still have that fear. And this is something that we have been looking at, we've been paying attention to, and we're seeing whether there's a way for us to support women in that area.
So many steps to it, right? Like
Yes.
the first thing, you recognize whether you have been discriminated against. Some people may not realize. And the second thing, what do you do?
How do
I
you
say,
respond
or who
to
do I
it?
approach?
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, huge thing. A final question from me. If you could travel back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self? 21, just graduated or graduating.
Yes, I would. I mean, this question, right? I always felt that, yeah, if I could really do that, I would tell myself to be comfortable in my own skin and not be somebody who is always very worried and concerned about what people think about me. What's going through people's mind when they hear me speak, and not to be afraid to just be myself, because at the end of the day, really actually nobody cares about how you look, how you sound, or where you're from. Actually, at the end of the day, all this is self-induced. And I only realized this when I'm at this age. And I'm going through that with my kids right now, who are in their teens. And I'm trying to tell them that, actually, you know what, you're perfect the way you are. And you really do not need to bother about what people think about you, because at the end of the day, really nobody cares. It's you, it's yourself.
Very excellent life advice. And like teenagers in particular, right?
I went through a period of really low self-esteem. So yeah, it's important.
Very good life advice. Thank you very much, Yan
Thank
Ping.
you.
So for the time and the discussion that we've had, I really enjoyed myself. Where might our listeners and viewers be able to find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, just look me up, Yan Ping Koh, Koh, Yan Ping Koh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.